you everybody for being here, and thank you Living Arts Collective for having me. I love speaking, and this is probably the first time I've done it in person since the pandemic, so I'm happy to be here. I'd like to take you back on a journey back to 2006. I was 30 years old, and I was ugly crying in the bathroom of the design headquarters of one of the top retailers in the United States. I had just gotten a highly prized internship, illustration internship, that I had worked so hard for. I had the most difficult 4 years of my life, and I had left my abusive husband, my abusive church, my entire religion, my home in California, and I went back to art school in the Midwest. I wanted to make an art career and support myself and feel good about what I was doing. And I thought, this internship, this is the key. And I worked my ass off to get it. I was so focused on this internship that I didn't even ask myself if I really wanted it. And so here I was on the first day, realizing that I hated it with a passion. I hated everything about it. And somehow I felt that I had somehow abandoned myself. Because if I would have really asked myself if I wanted it, deep down inside I knew there was somewhere that would have answered, no, that doesn't sound fun at all. I grew up in LA, the daughter of a pastor. And I grew up, my family was very creative. They supported the arts, they supported creativity. My father was an artist, but there was a lot of dogma, and there was a lot of abuse too. And so I was this very empathetic little person, and how I learned to survive was figuring out what I should do, what other people wanted me to do, and I was really good at doing that. And so you can see by this picture that I was playing, but I was very serious about doing it the right way. And when I was younger as well, I used to go to museums, and I would look at artists that inspired me. And these artists would kind of bring up these feelings in me that it was almost painful, like I was almost jealous, or I had this feeling that I wanted to express myself in some way, and it was almost like this pain that was inside of you. Maybe some of you have felt that, where you didn't know really what this feeling was, but that something wanted to be expressed through you. And if I would have looked back at this time, I would have recognized that that little hint, that feeling, was leading me somewhere. So after I had this very tumultuous 4 years, or couple years, I went back to art school at the age of 29. And I decided that the right thing to do was not to really study fine art, but to do something more practical. So I decided to do illustration, graphic design and illustration, something commercial, because I really had the assumption that, nobody made a living at fine art, right? And so I would have to do something commercial, and so I decided to be an illustration major, and I hustled my ass off during school. And so I would do jobs for local newspapers and companies and magazines, and I even published my first children's book. I had a teacher in art school who was, when we were doing the fine art, kind of base of our art school, and he said, "Esther, you're not an illustration major, you're a fine artist." And there was a part of me that knew he was right, but I was just so focused on, getting my illustration degree, getting that internship, that I ignored all those feelings. And I also was really interested in packaging and design and surface design and patterns. And so this led me to doing having a lot of this in my portfolio. I wish I could tell you that from that time that I was in the bathroom crying that when I got that internship, that everything changed from that day. I began listening to myself and my intuition, and I just had this beautiful career. But life doesn't really usually work out that way, if you might have found out in your own journey. And I got offered, in my senior year, I got offered a job in American Greetings. And this meant that I had to move to Cleveland. I didn't want to move to Cleveland at all. But you know what? It was a really great opportunity. I mean, it seemed like the perfect job, and they were paying me. And so, yeah, I abandoned myself again and moved to Cleveland. And, I worked in retail, and I did work like this, which was fun, But I was really good at, because in retail, there's these large retailers, right? So there's a lot of trend setting and figuring out trends, and I was really good at that, because guess what? I was really good at learning what people want and doing it. So I did a lot of that, and it only lasted a little less than 2 years there, and I ended up freelancing and getting some really awesome freelance gigs, which made me feel really good, because I felt like I was finally kind of breaking out from this box that I'd put myself in. And I got jobs like the Denver Post and Frito-Lay, and it was really cool. And then 2008 happened, the bust, and all my illustration gigs went away. And then I ended up going back to retail and getting those retail clients and those freelance clients. And again, figuring out what people wanted and doing that instead of listening to myself. And it turns out what most people in the US want are Santas. That's what pays the bills, y'all. Lots of Santas. Oh, you get me. And with every Santa I made, it was like my heart was breaking a little more, and I was getting back into that box, and I was getting more and more depressed. And Santas, there's a lot of people who like drawing Santas, but I am not one of them. You guys, I don't celebrate any holidays. I don't give cards. I even forgot my husband's birthday this year. It's not important. That kind of thing is not important to me. And so I got in this depression, and Santas became this sort of icon, this symbol for me being back in the box and not being able to find that expression that I wanted to find so badly, and abandoning myself. So I decided to hire a career coach. And I thought, I'm going to hire a career coach, and then I want her to tell me exactly what to do, to give me a formula, because I'm really good at following directions. And so, she could tell me how to find the clients I want and how to grow my business and make lots of money. And you know what she told me, right? She told me to get a sketchbook and try to play. And I thought, this is what I'm spending money on, is for somebody to tell me how to play and how to explore what I wanted to create. And I was kind of bummed out, but I did it, And I spent a lot of time exploring what I wanted to come out of me. And what happened was actually surprising to me. I started getting clients that I really liked. I started creating work that I really liked. And clients like Seattle Chocolate and Google and All the Best Pet Care and all kinds of clients that actually treated me well, because along with, making art that I didn't want to make, making illustrations that I didn't want to make, on this journey, I had also, one way that I abandoned myself was taking on clients that I didn't like, working long hours, and not having any boundaries and getting super drained. But I started creating boundaries, I started making art that I liked, and all of these people that aligned with me started finding me, and it was kind of amazing. And I was making money, and it felt really good. But I just kept coming back to this need for something deeper, something more wants to be expressed that's not being expressed by this illustration, right? And I just kept coming back to this feeling. So I decided that I was going to take a painting class. And I had taken a lot of painting. I've been painting forever, and I loved painting. But all of those shoulds in my mind, that I felt like there was some kind of recipe that I need to follow, that always made my painting, every time I produced something, it didn't look like how I wanted it to feel. It felt really stale or stagnant. And so I took this intuitive painting class, and we were dancing. There was no plan, and we would just dance and listen to music and use our hands, and it was totally wild. And for the first time, what came out of me, it felt like what I wanted to express. And for the first time, I felt that feeling of, wow, the analytical part of me started getting really curious. I think most people think that artists just are innately intuitive, but I had been living by, my analytical mind, and so I was kind of like, what is this thing called intuition? And what does this have to do with this feeling of creating from my authenticity? I had never lived from my intuition before, and so I just got really curious about the creative process and intuition. So I started studying, and I started studying Lynda Barry, reading Lynda Barry, and people like John Cleese, who talked a lot about creativity. And what I found was just a really interesting connection between how we create and the intuition. And that intuition is sort of like this GPS to our most authentic expression, and how letting go of sort of this analytical part of our mind can free us up to create in ways that we couldn't have imagined. And I also started studying neuroscience. And what I learned was that when I was taking that class, that intuitive painting class, that I actually got into what they call a flow state. And many of you probably experienced this, but it's this heightened state of consciousness. It's highly studied, and it's when we are in a place where we're creating and we feel really good and time stands still and we're not so focused on the outcome, right? And what actually happens, that scientists have found that what they've called transient hypofrontality. It's when our prefrontal cortex, which is the part of our brain that tries to keep us safe, right? That tries to figure out what other people want and to do it. That kind of steps back a bit, right? And our inner critic kind of goes away, and we have more access to the entirety of our brain and our subconscious, and I think to our authenticity and our essence. And I began to get really curious and think, like, is this why some artists are so powerful and they connect so deeply with you? Is because, or with me, because they're able to turn off their part of their brain. They're able to access something more within them, and that somehow it connects with us in a way that's super powerful. I would like you all to do a little exercise, if you'd like, and think about, you can close your eyes if you want, and think about your favorite artist. And these are a couple of mine. But your favorite artist or musician, and think about why you're attracted to them, why you would pay money to buy their work. It might be because of their technical ability, but it probably is something deeper, right? There's something that draws you to their work, and it's something about their essence that resonates with you. And I started thinking that everybody has this essence within them, right? I started teaching these things to my students, and I started seeing growth in my own life and in their work and in their process, and it was really exciting. I used to work, when I was in my 20s, I used to work for a photographer named Linnea Linkus. She was my mentor, and she photographed a lot of babies, and we used to talk about how all these babies were so different. Some of them, they would be kind of looking back and just watching everything, and some of them would be really interacting with everything and really just taking everything in, with their hands, and every baby, and if you've had babies yourself, or if you've been around a lot of them, you recognize that every little soul comes into this world different, right? We each have this part of us that is unique. And psychologists recognize that we have this energy within us that we want to express when we're even that young. And we do that by pulling hair. We want to express ourselves. That's one of the first ways. Or grabbing things. And what are we told? No, don't do that. Don't express yourself like that. It has to be another way. We do things this way, right? If you don't want to eat something, you have to eat it, right? If you want to dress a certain way, you can't do that. And so immediately, as we want to express ourselves, we get squashed down. And so I like to talk about your core creative essence. And this is that part of you that's been with you from the youngest, since you were a baby, that essence part of you. And Dr. Richard Schwartz, who invented this therapy called internal family systems, calls this self with a capital S. The psychologist Donald Winnicott called this your true self. And so we have this self, but it gets covered up by this cultural conditioning, right? These shoulds. And so I really believe that core creative essence is your greatest gift. I believe that each one of us has this built-in desire to uncover that essence, right? Take those layers off and uncover that, and to share it with the world. So that feeling that I had in the museum, that something wants to be shared, something wants to come out of me, I didn't realize that was such a precious intuition to follow. The more I learn about indigenous cultures, the more I recognize that artists are central to the community. They hold and shape and reflect our culture because they are able to tap in to this part of themselves and share it in a way that we can connect to. And that's why it's so important to be able to encourage artists, to lift them up and to support them, to help them find their authentic voice. It's a gift to themselves, it's a gift to the whole, to the community. And if you aren't an artist, I believe everybody is born with this gift, and that's what a lot of indigenous cultures believe as well, is that everybody's born with this gift, and it's for the community. It's for all of us. And so, and this journey of life is the uncovering of that, right? Robin Wall Kimmerer, who wrote Braiding Sweetgrass, wrote about this as everybody having this gift and we all need to be responsible and be present to that gift and uncover it and share it. As a coach, I help people to do this, and I love doing that. This quote from Oprah, I feel like really speaks to this. I don't know if you can read it. Each of us has a personal calling that is as unique as a fingerprint. The best way to succeed is to discover what you love and find a way to offer it to others. I found this to be so true in my own journey and in my clients and in my friends. So how do we discover what we love? I believe it is really about following your curiosity. So when I got that sketchbook, when I took that painting class, when I went down the rabbit hole of neuroscience and flow and the creative process, I was following my curiosity, and it began to take those layers off of my true self, of my core essence, my creative essence, of my trauma. And we're always uncovering more, right? And I really believe that our intuition, those little senses that I experienced in the bathroom or in the museum, they're our GPS that leads us to our most authentic expression. The second thing I would say is to let go of assumptions. Assumptions limit us. They're those layers of beliefs that we've carried on us since we were babies, right? And so taking those layers off, it frees us to open up to the possibilities of what is out there, right? Being able to live a good life as an artist, being able to share your work and your expression, whatever it looks like, with the world. The assumptions that I have were that I couldn't make a living through what I wanted to actually do. I assumed that I had to do exactly what others wanted me to do to survive, and those assumptions weren't true. So if I could tell my younger self in that bathroom anything, I would tell her, listen to that frustration. There's something there for you. Your intuition is showing you that you want to be free to explore your expression. So now I'm a coach, a speaker, a podcast host. I create workshops, and I really feel like I have connected to my purpose. And through our authenticity and uncovering those layers, we find our purpose and our fulfillment. And I know it's hard to imagine in this culture that's always telling us what to do, but if you can follow that curiosity and follow what's meaningful to you, it'll serve others as well. And if I could tell that younger self in the museum anything, I'd say, listen to that feeling too. That's your intuition showing you what you want. So my art has grown a lot since that first painting. It's become easier to follow my intuition. I don't always do it perfectly, but my goal is to live in flow every day. And I'm recognizing that my art is a part of my purpose. It's about connection. It's about connection to our journey, to our body, to each other, to the environment. My latest series is about the connection that we have to the ocean and to the sea life and to kelp in particular, and the biodiversity that lives within us and how we can connect to nature. And when I look at my work or when I coach people or speak, it's all the same work. It's about connecting people to the authenticity within them. So when you support artists, you're supporting your own journey. You're supporting your own community, the entire community, and you're helping us grow into a culture that values our own gifts instead of valuing our output or valuing what somebody else has told us and being a cog. And I want to live in a world that allows people to explore and uncover those gifts and share them, and for them to be valuable in the world. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening to me. And thank you, Living Arts Collective.